Yeah, they're pretty big.
Hi, welcome to Terry Talks Movies. It's Science Fiction Saturday again, so I've got 3 science fiction movies for you. But before we do that, as everybody who watches this channel knows, the real star of the show is Luna, my cat. And Luna impaled herself onto the wing of a dragon ornament about 6.5 weeks ago. And she had to have surgeries. There were 2 or 3 surgeries. She had to have the coat of shame on her head. She had to suffer through a lot, the poor little thing. There were drugs we had to give her, and we had to shoot anti-inflammatories down her neck, lots of things. But Luna is better. Luna is out in the backyard at the moment. She doesn't have the coat of shame on anymore. She's a very happy little feline. And so I thought I'd share with you this video of Luna taking her first steps outside after she got the all clear from the vet and after she got the coat of shame off her neck. She was a very happy little cat, as you can see, her tail's up in the air. She wandered out, and after this bit of video finished, she was rolling around on the pavers. She jumped over the fence into the neighbour's yard and hung around in between the 2 buildings. Really happy. She's on the mend. There's no long-term effects of the really horrible thing that happened to her Friday night 7 weeks ago. So thanks to everybody who asked after Luna. Thanks to everybody who gave love and support and care about her. She's better. Both middle-aged geek girl and I are incredibly happy about that. It was a traumatic experience for us all, but it's over now and we can all move on and watch the movies. The other good thing is that no rewatch January is over now, and so I can watch any movies I like. I don't just have to watch movies I've never seen before. But having said that, the 3 movies I've got for you, which are from the 2020s, and they're all science fiction movies that slipped off everybody's radar pretty much. They're small movies. They're movies that might be forgotten unless people pay close attention. I'm incredibly glad that all 3 of them got physical media releases in Australia. The ephemeral nature of streaming services means that movies like these are going to be forgotten and people won't remember them. People will kind of have a vague memory of them, forget the name of them, and not be able to find them again. So I thought I would review these 3 in order of quality as I see it, and just talk to you about why you should watch these films and why small, lo-fi science fiction films should be acknowledged and treasured, and really, in some cases, produce a better piece of entertainment and a better piece of a cultural artifact than many, many more expensive and more hyped movies. So let's get started. First one I've got for you is a bit of an oddity. It's a movie that's not from an English-speaking country, and it's a kids' science fiction space opera kind of film. It's actually Russian. It was directed by Zanik Faziev. And here's the weird thing. It's not based on a Russian intellectual property. It's based on an Irish-French cartoon series from 2006 to 2011 called Galactic Football, about which I've known nothing. It had absolutely no cultural impact in Australia. They made a feature film based on it in 2020 in Russia, and they spent a lot of money. It was made at the Mosfilm studio, which is the big film studio in Moscow, and it's a little thing called Cosmoball, which is basically sports ball mixed with alien invasion, mixed with all sorts of weird things, including a plushy kaiju, alien invaders, a whole bunch of different alien races. There is a ton of motion capture in this movie. The special effects are pretty good. They're not fantastic. They're not top level. They're not Marvel DC level, even though Marvel and DC have descended in quality. But it's kind of fun, and I picked it up very, very cheaply. Umbrella Entertainment released this in Australia. It's about a guy called Anton who can teleport short distances, and there are very few people who can do that in this post-apocalyptic Earth where the climate has shifted. The Earth got impacted by an alien something, which ended up turning Moscow tropical, New York's in the Arctic, and Australia seems to be a desert even on the East Coast. And the people who run Cosmoball are trying to encourage him to learn how to use that gift, because he will be able to play Cosmoball, and it's a really big important thing. Actually has a secret agenda in protecting the Earth from invasion. Anton doesn't like sports ball. I'm sympathetic with him up until the time he does. And so he is approached by various instrumentalities. He's approached by the people who run Cosmoball. He's also approached by the daughter of the big bad in this movie, who pretends to be a human but isn't. A lot of shape-shifting in this film. But of course, eventually, he finds out how to use his powers. They encourage it by trying to kill him and getting him to teleport, which sometimes he does not do and ends up kind of injured. The look of this film was really interesting. The special effects are used in an interesting way. The movie is pretty obviously aimed at kids and young adults at best, but it's kind of fun and it has that different feel about it, which makes it a little more interesting than, say, something equivalent in an English language movie from England or the United States or Canada. It's kind of fun. Do I think it's the best science fiction movie of 2020? No, it's not. Definitely not that. At $5, which is what I paid for this, it's worth checking out. There's the back cover. I showed this in the previous video I did. The production design is pretty good. The tropical Moscow, which has a lot of feel of Brazil, definitely doesn't feel like Moscow, even though there are some familiar landmarks to Muscovites, is really well evoked. The funny thing I found out about this is they didn't have enough tropical clothing available to the studio, so they went online and bought a ton of tropical weather clothing from India and had it imported to Moscow so they could have sufficient light clothing for all of the extras to wear. And there were times when there were 200 people in the background of this film, so it was a fairly big production. It wasn't particularly successful, but it was pretty big. And the motion capture and the green screen stuff is all done really well. They had to paint an entire wall of the inside of one of the Mosfilm studios blue to do a blue screen for it. So it's not as high tech as American science fiction movies are as far as the computer generated effects and the special effects in general. But it has a distinctive look. And even though I have a lot of problems with Russia as a political entity in the world, movies are something I can kind of accept while still recognizing that Putin's a criminal. Cosmoball might be a bit of fun to watch. I don't know whether it's on any streaming services. I wasn't able to find any here in Australia, but I definitely know it's got this physical copy. The movie is dubbed, and the dubbing is kind of okay. It's way above the kind of dubbing you get on a non-English language Netflix film, for instance, where the dubbing is universally horrible. But it was a bit of entertainment when I was hustling around looking for things I hadn't seen before to watch in January. This one was a light entertainment. It was a bit of a palate cleanser for me. And if you can find a copy of it, it might be a bit of fun to watch. I don't think you're going to watch it multiple times, but nonetheless, worth checking out and worth seeing what people in other cultures are doing as far as young, adult and child-oriented science fiction is concerned. Second film is French, directed by Mathieu Turi, and it has 2 actors in it. Actually 3, but it has 2 main characters in it. Third one's a child, Gael Weiss and a guy called Peter Franzen. And it's a low-key science fiction film. It's not quite what you think it is when you go into the movie. And it's a little thing called Meander, which is called Méandre in French. Again, very, very small cast. The movie goes from you thinking it's one kind of movie to you think it's another kind of movie, and then a third kind of movie, and possibly a fourth one. The story's pretty simple. A woman called Lisa is lying in the middle of the road at night. A guy pulls up in a car in front of her. She gets up and he offers her a lift. She accepts the lift and they begin talking. She tells him that her daughter has died, and her daughter's 9th birthday is today, and so she's feeling quite bad. And they're listening to the radio and driving to the nearest town. And on the radio comes a news bulletin saying there's a man who has killed some people who's on the loose, and he has a crucifix tattooed on the back of his thumb. The guy who picks her up, Adam, has that. He knocks Lisa out, and she wakes up in a very strange place. She wakes up in a sealed tube, and she's in a jumpsuit of some kind. She has a large lantern kind of thing around her wrist, which has a readout on it, and a door opens up in front of her, and there's a tunnel ahead of her, a metal tunnel, and a countdown clock starts running down. She crawls into the tunnel and goes on this journey of a whole bunch of different hazards, and that are definitely trying to kill her, or at least challenge her to the point that she overcomes something. She also gets chased by a mutated creature which tries to kill her while she's going through the tunnels. Not going to go further than that on the plot line because I've been told I tell too much of the plots in some of these reviews. It's a tight little film. The suspense is beautifully done. The direction is great. Tunnels are very limited kind of formats. You can only put the camera a certain number of places in a tunnel, even if you do have a cutaway of the side of the tunnel, which they use very efficiently at times. And Gaia Weiss playing Lisa is really good. Her character is totally believable in these situations. The weird things that she encounters and the perils she encounters are reacted to in an incredibly realistic way. This plays like a horror movie, even though it's not. Puzzles are interesting every time. Having had that trauma of her daughter dying, still is overcoming self-harm thoughts to survive in the immediate moment. And in some ways, the movie plays almost like a therapy session of a particularly brutal kind for Lisa, the character. A lot of people have compared this movie to Vincenzo Natali's Cube, and I can see the comparisons there. Cube, of course, is an ensemble piece with various characters going through the different cubes and trying to escape from each one, surviving the perils in that. In this one, the movie is tightly focused on one character and her determination to survive and to find out what the hell is going on. And Lisa proves to be a very resourceful, a very smart, and a very relatable character. Again, this isn't a big science fiction film. There was some money put into the sets, and the set design is fantastic. It just works. I think it's a very well written film, and the movie has the last third play out in a way that addresses and gives some comfort to Lisa in her grief. We do see some flashbacks of what actually occurred when her daughter died, and it's one of those tragic accidents that could happen to almost anybody. It's not that she did anything wrong particularly. It's not that her daughter did anything wrong particularly. It's just a really tragic accident. And Gaia Weiss does a really good job of giving us that character and making her a character who we want to prevail. And for a small film that I didn't pay much money for, this one really delivered for me. I like what it did, and I like the fact that even though it may have been influenced by movies like Cube, it is something of itself. It does give us a strong female central character. It gives perils which are comprehensible. They're not out of left field. They're very much grounded in her life and her experiences. And the climax is not entirely unpredictable, but quite satisfying. Again, I don't think it's the best science fiction movie ever, but it's an honest science fiction movie. It's an honest piece of drama. It's an honest horror film, and it plays the suspense very skillfully. You might want to check that one out.
I want to tell you a story. All you have to do is listen.
The third one I got for you is a 2022 Australian film called Monolith, directed by Matt Bessley, written by Lucy Campbell, and starring Lily Sullivan. Meander had 3 characters on the screen at the most. This one takes it down to one character, one single person, and a number of people she talks to, either through a Skype call or on the telephone. It's all set in one location pretty much, and it's a bit of a different science fiction film. Not an enormous budget. It was made for about $500,000 Australian dollars, and it delivers. It's a good, weird, scary, and kind of different science fiction film. There's a cover of the video with a slightly distorted Lily Sullivan on it. But the story is contemporary. It's not futuristic at all. It's about a disgraced journalist who never gets a name. She's just called the interviewer, played by Lily Sullivan. She's accused quite a prominent man of wrongdoing and hasn't backed up her primary source, and so she was discredited and lost her position as a journalist. She's not able to work as a journalist anymore because she's totally been discredited, and she's given an opportunity to start a podcast about weird goings on. She has been doxxed, and she is moved out of her home and is living in her wealthy parents' home in the country, and she gets an email saying that she should talk to a woman called Flora May about a black brick she owned about 20 years before, which has mysterious powers. Now, the interviewer is blocked for what she's going to talk about on this weird podcast somebody is getting her to create for their company, and so she decides to run with this and calls Flora May and finds out that 20 years ago, Flora May had a brick about the size of a gold ingot, which was black. It was almost like Fanta black. And the brick had a kind of sympathetic relationship to Flora May. And then weird things started to happen in the house where Flora May worked. So the interviewer uses this conversation with Flora May as the first episode of the podcast, all about this black brick. And then she goes on to talk to the person who bought the black brick, an art gallery guy in Germany. And he said he has a brick as well. And he has collected a number of these bricks in the vault of his art gallery. And that they do have freaky qualities to them. They've done a volumetric scan on them, and they all seem to have symbols embedded in them. They're really odd, and they are in some ways supernatural, or at least a technology unknown to human beings. And so the interviewer goes on this journey of finding out more and more about these bricks, and finding more and more people who have experienced these bricks, and the psychic link between the people and these bricks. And because she is not a good journalist, and because she does take shortcuts to achieve things, because she lives a life of privilege, she edits the podcast in a way that changed the narrative in some ways. She edits down Flora May's conversation to make it sound somewhat differently, and to zhuzh it up a bit. And this then leads to a deeper and deeper rabbit hole. And she's living in the house by herself. Her parents are overseas on a long vacation. And so she's isolated in this house, talking to people on the phone, and going deeper and deeper down this rabbit hole of these mysterious artifacts, which seem to be multiplying and seem to be occurring more and more frequently as her podcast episodes drop. This is a really good science fiction movie and a really weird film. It's shot beautifully. The cinematography is great. And the character of the interviewer, at first, you're kind of sympathetic to her. She's lost her job because she's screwed up. She's by herself. She's isolated. But then as the narrative continues, you find out that she is not a good person. She is self-serving. She's, at some levels, narcissistic. She will use other people in order to get the kind of career she wants to have back. Really, really interesting film. Again, low budget, lo-fi science fiction. There's the back of it, and there's a picture of Lily Sullivan as the interviewer. I like the use of technology in this. You see a Zoom H4n Pro audio recording device. You see her cutting and pasting the podcasts. I did podcasts from 2006 onwards, so I was really into the technical aspect of putting these things together and how you can change things so that it seems like people aren't saying what they actually said. And that unreliable gatekeeper of the information these people are giving her makes the interviewer a really interesting and really suspect character. Now, the film does have a resolution, which I find kind of interesting. Not going any further than that. I think it works. I don't think it's the most original science fiction resolution in the history of the universe, but it's an honest one. And the way that resolution plays out, both in the house and on the property, makes it really interesting. South Australia seems to be producing a whole bunch of interesting films in the horror and supernatural and science fiction genres. I mean, you've got things like Talk to Me. Going back, you've got The Babadook. And now you've got Monolith, which you really should check out. Good, low-key science fiction. The alien invasion is an incredibly subtle one. It's a really interesting one, and you can make parallels to movies like Pontypool, for instance. And it plays out as something of its own. And the fact that you learn more and more about the protagonist of the movie as the time goes on, and all the pieces come together, and the resolution starts coming closer and closer to occurring, and then it does. Works really well. One of the best science fiction movies made in Australia in the last 10 years, definitely. Like all good science fiction movies, it's based on character. And Lily Sullivan carries the entire movie by herself, which is not an easy task for anybody. But she does it, and she gives us just enough to understand a little more each time we see the character on who she is, who she was, and who she will become. You want to check that one out. Definitely interesting science fiction. It only has a DVD release here in Australia by Roadshow, but I'm glad it got a physical release. Like I said, these low-key, low-budget, low-fi science fiction movies are ephemeral if they don't get a physical media release. They will appear on streaming services. I believe this one's on the streaming service here in Australia called Binge, but eventually they'll disappear and they will be vaulted somewhere and forgotten unless people appreciate them in a physical atoms and molecules form. And again, that's what the channel's partly about. I don't think physical media is the only thing we should have. When the existence of a movie is as fragile and potentially ephemeral as this one is, I think that this one particularly talks to the times we're in and talks to the way media is shifting in Australia and in the world, and how podcasts are becoming incredibly viral, and how the people who gatekeep and create the entertainments we're now engaging with in a different way than we ever have before, how if they're unreliable and if they're dishonest, how this can have a profound impact on other people. Really interesting film. You should check this one out. Find a copy of it, watch it. So that's it for this time around. Thanks a lot for watching. Sunday's video is going to be another live stream because I haven't done one for February yet. And I've got a few things I want to talk about in that. So there's going to be a 2-hour live stream starting at about 7 a.m. on Monday morning Australian time. And there's a few things around that I want to talk about and have a bit of fun with. And I love the interaction with the people who come onto the live stream. But even if you can't get to the live stream, it's always good to listen to or watch afterwards. You can listen to it as a podcast. You can watch it as a video if you like. I think some of the best things we do here on the channel is the interactive stuff on the live streams. So there's that. So thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You can also support the channel by donating as a channel member, or you can become a patron at patreon.com/TerryTalksMovies. Both channel members and Patreon supporters get my monthly Spotify playlist of all the groovy music I've been listening to in the past month. And there are also going to be a few extras in future on those particular platforms. So until the live stream on Monday, watch some good movies and watch some bad movies and watch some obscure movies that nobody else has heard about. And I'll catch you next time.